The Girl from Otto by Amy Maroney, Book 1, Ab Initio, From the Beginning. Chapter 1, Autumn 1484, Castle Otto, Aragon, Elena. Like the breath of an angry god, the wind streamed over the mountains from the north and slammed into the castle. The balcony shutters bucked and heaved, straining against the iron latches that held them in place. To Elena's ears, the sound was the hollow clacking of bones. Wind goes where it wants, she thought, finding the source of a draft with her fingertips. She closed her eyes and imagined herself in the forest, where brittle leaves swirled in unruly flocks and golden-eyed owls blinked in the high branches of oaks. A faint moan rose up from across the room. Elena straightened up, squared her shoulders. The sooner they got on with it, the sooner she could escape these walls. She rolled up a small woolen rug and wedged it against the base of the shutters, muffling the rattle. Then she padded across the thick Moorish rugs to the great bed and pulled aside the drapes. The young woman lay curled on her side. In the candlelight, it was difficult to pick out details, but Elena had dressed and undressed this body so many times that she did not need the aid of the sun to understand the predicament. The woman, still a girl really, was built like a snowfinch. Her belly was far too large for her bony frame. For months, Elena had traced its bulbous arc with her fingertips, measuring the swell of it, prodding the taut skin. The likely explanation was not a giant, but twins, and for a first birth, that often meant catastrophe. She dipped a cloth into a copper pot of water that sat on the floor by the bed. With practiced movements, she bathed the woman's pale limbs, smoothed back her tangled hair, massaged lavender oil into her skin. "My lady, the baby can't wait any longer." Silence. She raised her voice. "Lady Marguerite, there's more yet to do. Rouse yourself." "Why do you shout at me so? Will you not let me sleep?" Marguerite turned her head toward Elena, her eyelids half open. Elena felt uneasy looking into those eyes. They were silvery green, like the hide of a tree frog, and the black lashes that framed them were spindly as spiders' legs. Perhaps it was this contrast of light and dark that made them so unsettling, or the long, slanting sweep of them, or their size, for they seemed much too large for the woman's angular face. Whatever it was, there was something more feline than human about them, and Elena had never been fond of cats. She looked away and put a hand on the distended belly. "If you wish your baby to die, by all means, sleep." Something hard, a knee, a foot, pressed against her palm, with urgent, fluttery movements. "If you wish your baby to live, then push. Now make your choice." The glowing eyes found hers. A pale, slender hand slipped into her strong brown one. The young woman on the bed took a deep breath, set her jaw, and bore down. The night was half gone when the baby was born. She squirmed and flailed her limbs, gulping air into her lungs and pumping it out again with wild shrieks. Elena cleaned her, swaddled her, and thrust her into her mother's arms. Marguerite bent her head over the baby. "A girl! God help me!" The newborn quieted and stared unblinking at her mother. After a few moments of utter stillness, she opened her tiny red mouth and began rooting for a breast. "She will be called Miramonde," Marguerite said softly. "One who sees the world." "How much can a girl see from behind a wall?" Elena asked. Marguerite shook her head. "She will not be caged. When she's old enough, she will learn the ways of the mountain people." Elena stared. "Who will teach her?" "You." Words of protest rose up in Elena's throat, but before she could speak, Marguerite convulsed in pain again. "Ah, I thought as much," Elena said. careful to keep a neutral voice. Twins. No, Marguerite moaned. That cannot be. What if it's another girl? Then we'll be doubly grateful to have a plan in place. When the second baby slid out of his mother's womb, Elena held him aloft so Marguerite could see what she had birthed. He was a tiny, red, crumpled thing, smaller than his sister. Elena rubbed him briskly with a piece of clean linen and blew on his drowsing eyelids until he opened his mouth and emitted a faint wail. An heir. My husband will be pleased. Marguerite's voice was low and rough, but whether that was due to emotion or exhaustion, Elena could not tell. If he survives the war, Elena said. Talk like that can get you whipped. Have a care. Who is going to hear? Your father-in-law is bedded down with his favorite wench, and the steward's lame back has made a thief of him. What do you mean? Marguerite's bloodshot eyes flickered to the door and back. Poppy milk. He's got your mother-in-law's bedtime habit now. Head lolling on the cushions, drooling. 'Tis not a pretty sight. Another gust of wind barreled down from the high peaks, and the shutters struggled against the rolled-up rug. Thump, thump, thump. Elena hurled an irritated look in the direction of the balcony and got back to the business of cleaning and swaddling the boy. She tucked him under his mother's arm and led his pursed red lips to her other breast. For a time they listened to the baby's nursing and the soft thumping of the shutters. In the space of a moment, you have slandered my husband's parents and their steward. I've seen serfs lose their heads for less damning words, Marguerite said finally. I placed all my trust in Brother Eros, bringing you here. I wonder now why he places his trust in you. Elena shrugged. I'm a creature of the mountains. Never learned to talk like a lady. You can start by biting your tongue. There are no secrets in this place. Tell me, my lady, if there are no secrets in the house of Otto, why am I here? We'll fail before we even begin. I order you to cease your prattling, and your impertinence grows. I've simply asked a question, my lady, Elena shot back. A fair one. Our plan will succeed. It must. And now you'll do your part to keep her safe. A tense silence settled over them until the baby girl fell asleep. Elena plucked her out of her mother's grasp and wrapped her in a length of soft wool. When all is said and done, you've 2 healthy babies, she said, and one of them a son. The luck of that. Marguerite closed her eyes, one hand on the necklace at her throat. Yes, the luck. There was a stable boy Elena trusted, whose mother she had healed from illness on 2 occasions. She drew her cloak shut to conceal the sleeping baby swaddled against her chest. Bending over the boy's nest in the straw, she gently woke him and asked him to fetch a certain horse that she knew to be steady and calm. He readied the mare and helped Elena into the saddle. She squeezed his hand in the dark. The horse clopped down the stone alley to the castle gates. The guards were not surprised to see her. She often came and went at odd hours. Good evening, my lady, called one. Look at you on that fine horse. I'm not one to put on airs, you know that well enough, she said in as light a voice as she could muster. Even poor mountain folk like me are given a favor now and then. The men unlatched the heavy iron crossbars, and the great oak doors swung open. Are you not afraid of wolves and bears? The other guard asked. Those creatures fear the moonlight. Puts them under a spell, it does. He snorted. The beasts outside these gates fear nothing but fire and iron. She forced out a laugh and prodded the horse forward. Behind her, the crossbars clanged shut. She turned her head and spat. An urge rose up in her to yank the horse's nose due west and gallop hard all the way to Basque country, to the edge of the world where the rivers flowed into the sea. Instead, she dug her heels into the horse's belly, guiding it deep into the mountains. There was no point wasting her thoughts on idle fantasies. She would not betray a promise. The horse followed the moonlit trail across streams and through stretches of forest until it shambled to a stop at a fork. The baby took a shuddering breath and started to wail. The swiftest way into Bern was the road to the right, which snaked down into a narrow valley where the yellow glow of a campfire was visible. This time of year, mule trains plied the road constantly, taking wares from Aragon to the market towns in the north. She did not like the idea of encountering the makers of that fire, especially with a shrieking baby and whatever Lady Marguerite had placed in the leather pouch she carried. To the left, the steep path led to the valley of Ronzal with its cluster of stone cottages. Elena squinted into the night. The moon was playing tricks on her, dappling the grass and trees with smears of silver light that moved and twisted in the wind. The baby's cries hammered into her skull. Every wolf and bear for miles must be aware of them by now. She made her choice. The rhythm of the horse's steps soon put the baby back to sleep. Overhead, the moon slid to the top of the sky. Her muscles were stiff with cold when they arrived in Ronzal, on the south-facing edge of a valley in the shadow of the mountains. In the moonlight, she spied a thin column of smoke rising from the chimney hole of the Deleuze family's home. Before she even dismounted, Jorge opened the door. "What brings you here at this hour, my friend?" he called softly. Come in," his wife Therese said quickly from behind him. "You're always welcome here." Jorge helped Elena off the horse and clapped a hand on her shoulder. For the first time in months, she felt the knot of worry in her chest ease. By the fire, she hastily untied her cloak and pulled the baby free. "Would you share your milk?" she asked Therese. Therese laid her infant son on the bed and took the baby girl in her arms. She fingered the soft wool wrappings and glanced up at Elena. "No peasant child is garbed in wool this fine." Elena felt her throat tighten. She kept silent and rubbed her hands together before the fire, while Therese settled in a chair with the girl at her breast. Jorge returned and latched the door. "The horse wears the brand of the Otos." He crouched by the fire and threw a log on the smoldering embers, poking it with his dagger. "First you go live on the doorstep of your great enemy, and now you steal his horse. You court death, Elena." "I hate that I've drawn you into this, after all the kindness you've shown me." Jorge's eyes were on the infant at his wife's breast. "Where will you take that one?" Elena deliberated a moment before answering. "Belarac." "What will a child do there? The place crumbles into dust. I should know. We're bound to them, and they to us, and little good has come of it in my lifetime." "The new abbess has stars in her eyes, that's what." Elena's voice was bitter. "Stars and gold. When your men take the flocks down the mountain come autumn, go with them and see for yourself the changes that are afoot. Could be Ronzal's fortunes will rise with Belarac, if you're cunning about it." "But what?" Therese stopped him with a look. "Let her rest." At dawn, Elena said her goodbyes and guided the horse along the rough, winding path to the pass. Overhead, the sky was a dull gray. Fog swirled through the notch that was the passage to Bern, obscuring the ridges and deep valleys that lay to the north. The horse stumbled down slopes of shale, its hooves scraping and clattering over the rock. Elena gripped the saddle with her thighs, one arm encircling the baby, her muscles aching with the effort to stay upright. Finally, they slipped below the tree line into a pine forest, the silence pressing down on them like an invisible cloak. A lone crow followed them through the pines to a beech grove, scolding them with harsh, accusing cries. Elena vowed to herself that if its rasping woke the baby, she would decapitate it with a well-aimed rock. But the girls slept through the journey, oblivious. The light of day had been nearly snuffed out when she saw the dark outlines of the abbey jutting into the purple sky. The baby began to wail. Elena dug her heels into the horse's belly, and it cantered through the narrow valley, kicking up dirt clods in the fields that radiated outward from the abbey's stone walls. At the gates, she pulled the frayed rope that hung from the battered iron bell. In a moment, 2 shrouded figures appeared. One led the horse to the stables, the other motioned to Elena to follow her through a vast courtyard laid with dark cobblestones. The bell tower topped with its iron cross loomed overhead. Elena quelled a desire to run for the gates by biting her lip hard enough to taste blood. Inside the battered oak doors, 2 nuns waited. One of them reached for the baby. Elena stiffened. "What do you mean to do with her?" "The wet nurse awaits," the woman said. "Poor thing, she's so hungry." Elena worked the infant free from her wrappings. Her hands trembled. She gave her head a quick shake, attempting to clear the worry from it. Shouldn't she be pleased to be done with this fool's errand? Yet something within her hesitated. For some reason she couldn't fathom, she hated the idea of handing the girl over. "Take the child, then," she said gruffly, "before she kills herself with all that screaming." The chapel bell awoke Elena at dawn. A young nun led her through the dank corridors to the abbess's residence. She padded past tapestries on the walls and heavy oak furniture that glistened with beeswax. Wasn't this the way of things, she thought, rolling her eyes. The rest of the abbey reeked of poverty and ruin, but the abbess had made sure her private quarters were comfortable. Beatrice sat unsmiling behind her wide oak desk, her thin frame nearly swallowed up by her black habit. Her finger, when she pointed at a chair, put Elena in mind of a bird's claw. "Your journey must have been difficult," she said. "Sit." "On the contrary, crossing those mountains is no trouble to me. I've known the way far too long." Elena remained upright, though every muscle in her body was knotted with pain from the journey. She retrieved the pouch from her pocket and handed it over. "God protected you and the child from the dangers in those woods," Beatrice said, weighing the pouch in her hand. "Our prayers were answered." Elena wanted to say that God and prayers had nothing to do with it, but she held herself in check. "And Lady d'Otto?" Beatrice asked. "The birth of her child was not too difficult?" "She suffered, but not more than any woman bearing twins." Beatrice drew her eyebrows together in a frown. "The girl was born first," Elena said. "Her mother calls her Miramonde. Second came a son. His father will name the boy when he returns from the southern wars." "A son? How fortuitous." "If you say so. Ramon d'Otto has an heir. Surely you see the value in that?" Elena shrugged. "'Tis none of it my concern." Beatrice's lips compressed into a thin line. "Bellorac once gave you sanctuary when you had nowhere else to go. And as for that family, you now live within their gates. Your every move is at their mercy. I would say that makes them very much your concern." Elena said nothing, just pulled up her sleeve and held out her scarred arm. "Oh, God save you. I've told you before, Bellorac is not to blame for that." "No, Ramon d'Otto is." "You were both children," Beatrice said, standing. "He's grown now, a warrior. One day he'll be a baron. A spat with a kitchen waif does not warrant remembering for a man such as he, so put aside your fears." "You misjudge me, Abbess. I don't fear the man. I despise him, and his father before him. The lot of them, in truth. I hate the house of Otto." "Ah, thank you for that point of clarification. And now I have things to attend to." Elena did not turn away. "The girl must never learn who her people are." "Of course. She will simply be known as an orphan who boards here. Another thing, she won't be shut up in here whispering prayers all the year long. Beatrice stiffened. That is enough impertinent talk from a mountain woman. For now, all the girl needs is a wet nurse. I believe we can agree on that count, at least. In any event, I will decide how she spends her days. Elena shook her head. No, her mother decides. She wouldn't have named her Miramonde if she wanted her locked inside those walls, rotting away. What do you mean? Miramonde, one who sees the world. How interesting that her mother would ascribe such power to the name of a girl. Is there a letter from the lady to this effect, or have you become her mouthpiece? What I am is a messenger, and if you wish me to deliver more gold into your hands, you'll do well to heed my words. Elena wheeled on the abbess and stalked out the door.